Hi everyone, delonewolf here. Welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And this has definitely been a pretty interesting week in EVE Online with a difficult patch for the game and CCP to digest at the moment. So it may not look like much, but of course, having to switch out 15-year-old code for all of the chat systems in the game is going to have a pretty big impact on all of that. And that is the reason why we're struggling so hard at the moment to get everything back up and running the way we would expect. It's just part of the game, I guess. It feels like it's a little bit unfortunate that this is happening so close to FanFest. But on the other hand, of course, in the upcoming weeks, I do expect CCP to come out with quite a bit of information and to start to build up hype for their future plans for EVE Online. So I would say that maybe from that perspective it makes sense to do all of these invasive surgeries, you could say, to the game at this point. And on the front of all of the new information about EVE Online, well, there's really not that much that is coming out right now, but there are all of these teasers from the consortium. So that is definitely a YouTube channel that you should keep an eye out for, because they try to dig and find every bit of information, especially lore-wise, that might indicate to what's coming for EVE Online in the future, and it's definitely pretty interesting. So keep an eye on the events channels, keep an eye on the consortium channels, just to make sure that you don't miss what's happening and what might be happening in the near future. We are here for the market, of course, so let's jump in. As always, we'll start with some plex. It's gonna be at 155. Like that. And well, in Jita, 3,055,000 for the first sell order. It's a pretty big jump up to 3.1 million for most of the other sell orders, but especially the buyers below 3 million in Jita is a bit surprising. These sellers in player owned trade hubs go down to 3,038,000 ISK, so really very close to 3 million, and the buyers go up to just shy of 3 million, 2,977,000. So here though, we can see that we've got a bit of pressure on normalized volume. So I would say that after that increase in price where the market tried to get back up from CCP's intervention, we're actually being driven back down here. Is there another sale going on? Not that I know of, but I may be wrong on that. But it definitely feels like a little bit of correction, and the market, especially the buyers here, want to get plex below 3 million, so they are constantly going down and very hesitant to put up buy orders above 3 million at this point. We'll see if this has any more momentum. We might actually get close to what we might consider to be cheap plex. Plex at 3 million a year from now, give it 1, 2, 3 years of inflation, and that might actually be a pretty good price. So it's all relative, but at the moment I would say plex is looking like it wants to go below 3 million ISK. Maybe it will at some point, and you might already be able to purchase some of those at less than 3 million ISK. If big hype comes, of course, then we might actually see the exact opposite pretty soon as well. So who knows? From the entire chart, this does not look like too good a time to be purchasing, but I myself, if I'd have lots of ISK to spend and wouldn't know where to park it, I might look at some of these plex below 3 million at this point. Next up, let's take a look at the multiple pilot training certificates, continuing the downtrend, now going for less than a billion ISK. Another thing that personally, you know, if you're looking to protect some of your ISK against inflation for the longer term, this to me feels like a no-brainer. The sellers are at 1,044 million ISK, the buyers are at 967 million ISK, so you can pick up a multiple pilot training certificate, which is 30 days game time for a character on an account that's already paid for, of course, but still that holds more value, normally speaking, than a billion ISK. The problem is that the sale has just been so successful that the market is being flooded with way too much stuff at the moment, and that is why this is actually a pretty good buy opportunity, I would say, but for the very long time, because there's still so much on the market that still needs to be absorbed by it, that you'll need a lot of patience in order to actually see that price go back up to reasonable levels, close to plex prices, you could say. But the expectations, I would say, are fully that this will happen at some point. So in my opinion, it would make sense to buy at least a couple of these. Next up, we will take a look at the skill extractors, which are well, doing some weird different jumps from plex, but that's because of individual sales. Of course, we can see that on a massive volume spike here. Currently selling for 341.7 million ISK, and the buyers are at 328 million ISK. Probably, yeah, a little bit cheaper than the previous few months. Not all that cheap compared to where we started off last year, but still another little dip here, where your personal expectation, I would say, on is this actually continued pressure that might go down even lower, or should I start buying for, well, my protection against inflation in the future of the game? Next up, the large skill injectors. Let's see what those are doing. Yeah, also, you know, dip below 800 million ISK, trying to get back to it, but definitely very hesitant to go there. So we're not at the high point for skill injectors anymore at this point. 790 million for the sellers, 780 for the buyers. Excuse me. So a little bit of a discount, very same story in my opinion. I don't think that there's any sign that the demand for skills points themselves is going anywhere anytime soon. On top of that, the little dip here is of course due to the lower prices for plex and skill extractors. So do you see this as a small buy opportunity? If you expect lots of inflation, maybe lots of hype in the near future, then this is probably a good chance to pick some of those large skill injectors and try to purchase them for less than 800 million ISK and take that as a reference point. You know, if you expect inflation and we get another year of a chart like this, then, you know, 650 would be the start and 800 would now be the start. You might see a billion ISK at some point in maybe a year, maybe 1.5 years, something like that. It's definitely something to keep in mind on these dips that have at the moment mostly been influenced by sales from CCP, but potentially the market might be on a bit of a downtrend as we still wait for more information towards FanFest. Next up here we've got the small skill injector, also under pressure, heading for 160 million here. Yep, sellers in fact coming in with a decent number at less than 160 million, buyers at 157 almost. You know, again, small little dip back to the averages of November, December. It's your choice whether or not you want to invest at this point. And then finally we have the daily alpha injectors, which I suspect won't be moving all that much because you just grab them from the plex market. So 60.5 million for the first seller, 60 to 61 million mostly, and the buyers are at 56 million, actually a little bit of a margin opening up there as well. Next up we have our minerals, that's going to be at 8.5. Like that. And good news, I would say, titanium, you know, really tried to get back to 5.5 ISK, which is above the average for the entire chart. Maybe under pressure a little bit, but I think that basically this data point might be an anomalous one for today. Let's take a look at sellers and buyers. Here we do want to filter for JITA. 5.6 ISK for the sellers, 528 for the buyers, so both now well above 5 ISK here. A nice little comeback for titanium, very good news. And 5.6 right here on the chart. I would say that this is definitely a small sell opportunity if you're looking to unload some of your titanium cheaply. It's definitely a chance to do so. Why is this happening? I don't have anything all too concrete. My theory would be that at the moment the patch problems have made mining a bit more risky in nullsec all of a sudden. If you can't use local as a good information tool, there might be some alliances and some groups that say don't go out in your call at the moment. That might have driven down supply a little bit, but also the fatigue changes and some of the rebalancings might make nullsec a bit more active in the destruction aspects of the game, which might yield more demand for minerals and thus the increased price for titanium. We'll have to see if the others follow suit. Here is pyrite, unfortunately no sign of that, still staying below 4.5 ISK, so 447 for the sellers and 428 for the buyers of pyrite. Very, very cheap at the moment. Next up we have Mixolon, which I suspect will be going back up, and it does. It's heading for 80 ISK. Sellers in fact at 81.45 and the buyers at 76.22. Definitely again, if we take a look at 81 right here, at the high end of the chart, and so the bottlenecks might just be Mexilon, Tritanium for Nullsec at the moment. With all the patch problems, we might see a lower supplies from there. Sell opportunity in both here. Definitely your focus, if you're mining in HiSec, focus on Tritanium and focus on Mexilon if you can, because Pyrite is bad, and here is Isogen that just remains really dreadful, heading for yet another 1 year low point here. 33.84 for the sellers, 32.69 for the buyers. Isogen substantially below 35 is something I don't think we've ever seen that before. Maybe at the very beginning of the game some crazy stuff might have happened, but definitely not since I've played the game have we seen Isogen this low. Pretty crazy situation. Noxium next, also staying close to that 1 year low point, below 325. Sellers are at 328, buyers 315. So it's actually mostly buyers that are still winning out here, just because of such low prices and an average below 325, whereas sellers are above that. Next up we have Nullsec. That's even more bad news. Here is Zydrine heading straight for 700 ISK, a 1 year low point once again. 698 for the first seller, still millions of them coming in at these prices. 604 for the buyers. Just look at that gap here, the pull down for Nullsec minerals is happening, and it's hard. At some point we're gonna have to switch from Nullsec minerals just to talk about all of these as minerals in general, except for Morphite probably. I'm not sure if you can moon mine for those, but I think that there is very little question that this is the opening up of moon mining to 0.5 systems that is creating a lot of this devaluation for these former, you could say, Nullsec minerals here. Massive supplies coming from relatively safe systems where, well, yeah, the Care Bears live, and they do like to mine themselves as well. So there we go, Zydrine less than 700 ISK, and for Megasite it's the same pattern. Another 1 year low point, even more volatility, heading for 800 ISK here. 873 for the sellers, buyers at 825, still keeping that margin open. And yeah, lookouts below here. The HiSec miners are crashing your minerals Nullsec, and as a result it's basically making the entire mineral market more uniform and also more depressed at the moment, because it's just so easy to get all of these minerals now compared to, well, a couple of years ago. When it comes to Morphite here, also under pressure, but still not playing with a 1 year low point, so basically sustainably below 10,000 ISK. 9,600 for the sellers, 9,300 for the buyers. I would personally wait for prices close to 8,000 on the buyer side to be sure that you pick up some really cheap Morphite, but you know, some people say that anything below 10,000 ISK might already be a good investment. When the spikes happen in Morphite, they are generally speaking pretty violent and give you sell opportunities even if you would buy at this point. After minerals, let's move on to some PI at 1320. There we go. Let's go over these and see if we can spot any more trends. Here are the broadcast nodes after reaching a pretty high point of 2.4 million ISK on, of course, the moon mining that we've just been talking about. All those new refineries need to be produced. There is a lot of refineries up in Dital at the moment, and I think that even if you pass through a system, you don't get the actual feeling of how many refineries are there, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you don't give anyone else docking rights, they don't show up on overview. And as a result, there's probably lots of people that have these types of operations, but you know, for safety reasons choose to keep those to themselves, and also for profit reasons, of course. If you get 4 or 5 people that actively mine, they can clean that up, and you don't want any of the neutrals to come and pick up your Tech 2 materials, your Zydrine, your Megasite. And I think that is why just flying through the systems doesn't give you the right idea on how many refineries are actively moon mining in any given system. But we are coming down from that gold rush, of course, because we are back below 2.25 million here. 2.2 million for the sellers, 2.2 million for the buyers. Very narrow margin, so there is still strong demand, despite the fact that we're probably still a bit above average, but it's not as strong as the rush that's been happening in the last month or so. Construction blocks shooting up to 14,000 ISK, not bad, definitely a sell opportunity here. 14,500 for the sellers, 13,500 for the buyers. Nice to see a little bit of volatility and construction blocks, which a couple months ago you could have easily bought for, let's take a look at that, probably 11,000 ISK. You're now trying to sell that for 14,500, not a bad profit margin here. In also a matter of maybe 10 days, we got this nice spike up. Consumer electronics staying really strong at 15,000 ISK. You know, November, December we should have bought on that dip, but who knew then? 15,740 ISK for the sellers, 15,100 for the buyers. Definitely above average and a great time to sell. Coolants staying at its low point, unfortunately, fuel related. I do think at some point that's going to switch up a little bit because of all the extra refineries, but must also admit that just keeping the drill up and running doesn't cost all that much. So at the moment the PI for fuel tends to be quite depressed, 8,500 almost for the sellers, 8,000 ISK for the buyers, very cheap. Enriched uranium also coming back under pressure here, which is bad news. This one was one of those fuel related PI materials that managed to make a little bit of a comeback. But we can see here at the tail end that the market is having none of it. 11,450 for 11,500 you could say for the sellers, 10,500 for the buyers. Pretty natural margin between these two, but under pressure. So you know, you might want to sell if you want to get rid of enriched uranium right now. Otherwise, I'd have a little bit of patience and maybe wait for a bit of a more sustained comeback. Integrity response drones still above the normal average of 2.5 million ISK, but also not at the high point of 3 million. So selling for 2.7 million, buyers at 2.6 million. You know, you're still paying a premium because there is lots of demand out there, but it's also slowly coming under pressure, I think. Mechanical parts still dreadfully bad, fuel related of course, 8,900 for the sellers, 8,400 for the buyers. There's not much to say if you're still producing this type of stuff, which I am as well. Well, I would say start to sell, don't just endlessly stack up, or you know, if you really want more bang for your buck, start considering to tone some of these down and produce something else on those planets. Nuclear reactors sustaining a price of 130,000 ISK at the moment, so 124 actually for the sellers, 115 for the buyers. So that does indicate a little bit of pressure at the tail end. What I'm personally hoping for is some more volatility, like this nice spike and this like nice dip here. So if you would have been able to buy for 80,000 ISK and now and they're sell for 180,000 ISK, that's pretty damn nice over 4 months here. At the moment we're in between, a little bit above average and going under pressure, so let's hope that we can dip well below 100,000 ISK pretty soon here and create a buy opportunity in nuclear reactors. But it's a very nice material that does have lots of ways on a yearly basis that I think you can potentially make a good profit on. Robotics next, staying at 100,000 ISK. You know, luckily that dip has been averted, but there's not much to say. Margin is quite tight for this for robotics at the moment, but I would say that considering coolants and mechanical parts, you know, they're fuel related items, that those are still staying really low. I think that the pressure is mostly on the downside, and that robotics, I would not invest at this point in any robotics because I do think that will dip well below 100,000 ISK at some point. Self-harmonizing power cores, you know, advanced PI materials, same story. We had to pay 2.5 million in the last month or so because of all of the refineries. We're finally coming back down to a more normal price, 2.1 million for the sellers, 2.1 million for the buyers. Buyers still up a little bit because of the strong demand, but we are recovering from that. Superconductors next, after a lovely spike up to 15,000 ISK, I think last week. Had to give back some ground to 13,000 or even 12,500, but is on its way back up here. So sellers 14,200, well above average. Buyers 12,900, also above average. This is definitely a pretty good time to unload some of your superconductors. Test cultures also going back up in price a little bit, I think because of all of the interest in these advanced PI materials that you need to base as well. And so test cultures is clawing back to 9,900 for the sellers and 9,000 ISK for the buyers. Definitely 9,900 for the sellers, definitely above average right now. Maybe a slight opportunity if you are making, or if you have vast stocks of test cartridges and you're losing patience, you could try to sell some at the moment. And finally, we've got wetware mainframes, which again shows the same pattern here. A nice spike up to 2.8 million for wetware mainframes on all the new refineries. Still selling for 2.6 million, buyers at 2.5. Still above the average, but slowly coming down. So PI at the moment, some volatility to my surprise in some of these refined planetary materials that are not related to fuels. And that's where the opportunities lie, I think. Next up, we have the Tech 1 chips at 2030. I would say this will not go up too much here, although the Apocalypse is still trying to get to 150 million, which is a normal average price. Considering where Megasite and Zydrine are heading, Isogen another 1 year low, Pyrite still staying at a 1 year low, and Noxium as well, I don't think that Tritanium and Mexalon can stem the tide of the lower prices for Tech 1 chips at the moment, because just, you know, more supply coming online in 0.5 systems has created this increased supply yet again. So even lower prices, I think it's going to start to show up in the Tech 1 chips pretty soon, and that we will get even lower prices for those. So the Caracal here is probably going to have a very hard time climbing back above 10 million ISK. It's now selling for 9.8, buyers are at 9.1, and that pressure here, I think it's just cheaper minerals, because you can produce all of these Tech 1 chips more and more cheaply. Catalyst also now since a long time, well, actually it dove below 1.25 million, but is doing so again. And let's see at the supply numbers, 243 here, another 128 coming in. So yeah, we're definitely seeing that down pressure, I think. 1,250,000 for the sellers, 1,150 for the buyers. The Drake here, ooh, the Drake doing something different, staying above 50 million is quite respectable. 50 million for the sellers, 48 million almost for the buyers. I think, let's take a look if we can have it straight. Kinetic heavy missile bonus, really good for the hunt, of course, very specific for the current pirates. So I think that that is why we have this increased interest in the Drake, which is something to note, of course, when a new event is announced, and they tend to be open to any type of ship. Consider what might an alpha clone want to use in order to be able to compete in these events. And the Drake, of course, really good big passive tank, more than what you would need even with alpha skills, I think, in order to run these sites. And a nice damage bonus for the damage hull of the current rats is, of course, something that is going to increase in interest. And thus, at the moment, the Drake selling for a nice premium, more than 50 million is a small opportunity thanks to the event. It's definitely something that we need to learn as well, because it's alpha clones and the events are going to become more and more of a factor, I think, when it comes to swings in the Tech 1 ships, because they'll be mostly the type of players that will be using them. I, for instance, am now using an Onyx, and I have plenty of Tech 2 options with an incredible resistance profile for the current event. And so as a result, Tech 1s, you know, try to think, what do alpha clones want to use here? The Ferox also going back up in price here, well above 50 million. Does he have that kind of a bonus as well? Nope, not really. That's quite strange. Maybe PvP recovery here, but 53 million for the sellers, 48 million for the buyers. Definitely against my expectations, but it's definitely also increased interest because of this volume spike. And the Drake here, you can see increased volumes as well, close to start of the hunt. Hurricane next, here staying at around 45 million ISK here, but look at the pressure coming in here. Sellers coming in at 43.5, buyers at 41.5. That's more the pattern that I was expecting. Megatron also stalling, staying at around 150, 157 for the sellers and 149 for the buyers. So around 150 for a battleship. The Oracle also taking off here, 85 million, yeah, 87 for the sellers, 69 for the buyers. Are we talking a volume spike? No, so this is just a lack of supply in this ship. A small opportunity if you have an Oracle Blueprint Original. I think you can make some of those at a nice premium at the current prices. The Raven also here slightly under pressure in the last month or so, 160 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. Retriever continuing its pressure down to less than 20 million, really 22 for the sellers, but 18.6 for the buyers. That is definitely not great. I do think that the mining barges are going to, are at the moment losing out a little bit on the interest throughout the player base. Alpha clones are barred from these, and to be honest, you're probably going for Orcal or an Orca if you're mining at some point. So you no longer focus on retrievers, hulks, things like that. Instead, you're going for the capital ships, of course. The Tempest crawling out of the hole here, heading for 160. 160 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. Yet again, not much to say there. Thrasher next, under pressure, pretty obviously, heading for less than a million ISK, I think. Yeah, 1 million for the sellers, 940,000 ISK for the buyers. Then we've got the Tornado, also coming under pressure here, less than 65 million ISK now. On average, 66 for the sellers and 59 for the buyers. And then the Tristan, also dipping below 500,000 ISK. Yep, with still pretty decent numbers coming in here, so that pressure is on as well. Venture, pretty flat, I would say, but yeah, 250,000 ISK, there's not much to say there. And here we've got the Vexor. After the dip, it managed to recover back to 10 million ISK on increased volumes, but look at the pressure here, decent supplies coming in right away towards 10 million. So anything new in the Vexor market is going to start to compete below 10 million ISK, 9.2 for the buyers. Still plenty of room to get back below that 10 million average, which we managed to stay above for quite a while. But I think with the new mineral prices that we are going to sustainably move between 9 and 10 million ISK. So it doesn't show up just yet in the Tech 1 market, but I think if we can sustain these low megasite and Zydrine prices for a couple of weeks to a couple of months, then you will start to see a real impact on the Tech 1 market. Next up we have Tech 2. Let's take a look at that at 26.55. Okay, making good progress this week. Let's take a look at these and see what's happening. Ooh, I do like what I see here. The Aries dipping well below 30 million ISK and 28 million here. Basically the lowest point since the introduction of the moon mining changes. 27.7 million for the sellers and still 577 of them coming in here. Less than 25 million for the buyers. It's really, last week I was a bit depressed. So many of them went back above 30 million is that I thought maybe this is it. This is actually the new normal trade range, but this is now actually a sign of the exact opposite. If we can get the Aries buyers below 25 million and still have 577 as a sell order here at the cheapest price, we may start to move in this band from now on and have dips that go even lower. So quite interesting. Cerberus going back up in price, that's actually pretty normal as well. There's no Cerberus available. This is obviously again related to the hunt event, because just like the Drake, we have a really good ship with, I think, kinetic bonus. Yep, there 5% bonus to kinetic, light, heavy missiles and heavy assault missiles. So the events are becoming very important when it comes to what's happening in some of these ship markets. Next up here, we've got the Claw trying to get back below 30 million is. Come on, do it. Sellers 30.8 million, buyers at 27 million. Keep that pressure up. Come on, guys. The Crow next here also going back down, but not breaking 30 million just yet. 31.3 for the sellers and 27 million for the buyers. The buyers are staying below that point though. Next up here we've got the Crusader, also slowly meandering down, but not managing to get back above 30 million. And it's nice to see 50 and 65 of them at 28.7 million, buyers at 25. And yeah, let's hope that the story can continue that way. Here is the Heretic spiking back up to 80 million. So that's, of course, I'm focusing on the frigates because I think that the smallest items, the easiest to produce items, will start the trend here. Here is the Hound, sustainably below 30 million. So I'd say that that's good news. Look at all of that supply at 29 to 28 million. 137, another 40 right here, and the buyers are down to 26.5 million. You know, if we could dip from here, then I'd be happy. If we could dip here to 25 million at some point, then I would really be happy. Next up, we've got the Ishtar, pretty sustainably above 250 million. Here is the Manticore, Manticore, you're showing the exact opposite of what I want to see, but it's a spike up to 35 million, which is not up to more than 40 million ISK, and it's actually staying there. 36 million for the sellers, 31.7 for the buyers. We've always had to pay a premium for the Manticore though. Here's the Nemesis, also working its way back up to 30 million, so I'm hoping that this dip is not the anomaly, but that will actually start to move closer to this as a price range. That's the second leg down. So right now we're moving around 30 million usually as an average price range in the couple of months. After 2 months of the introduction, that was a new price band. I'm actually hoping that we can get that band another 5 million lower. But yeah, the Nemesis is not showing that pattern just yet. Pontifex still pretty expensive at above 75 million. 85 in fact for the sellers. Availability is not great, of course. That's just the state of the Tech 2 market. And the Purifier back up to 35 million. That's not what I wanted to see, guys. Although the spikes are still going down, we need to see these bottoms go down as well towards 25 million. And this one is showing the exact opposite pattern. Purifier still selling for 35.5 million. Buyers coming in at 30 million. That's the one that definitely counters what's happening in the Aries markets. Then we've got the Raptor staying above 30 million, so that's not great news either. Buyers still staying at 29 million. They feel forced to stay really close to that. The Saber next pretty stable at 70. Here is the Stiletto then, dipping below 30 million. Thank God some of them do. 29.5 for the sellers, and still look at that full front page, more than that in fact, of sellers below 30 million. That should be enough to last us a while. Buyers at 25 million. That is the next pattern that I want to see more of, and then I actually want to start to see the buyers go below 25 million and the sellers close to 25 million. Will it happen? I don't know. I still think it is possible if we look at what's happening with the Nullsic minerals at the moment. All of those Tech 2 supplies still need a little bit of a workaround because you can't use the alchemy or something like that. The transformation of those base materials can't be done outside of Nullsic, I think. So there's still this roundabout way for that supply to find a market, but I think it will happen. The Stork here still at 80 million ISK, and then finally the Terran is also at least it's bumping off of 24.8 million. It's heading back for 30 million. But look at the sellers below 30 million here. There's 68, 20, 20, 37. Sellers at 29 million. Buyers at 24 million. Let's hope that we don't have a spike like above 30 million and that we can actually start to go back down here. So yeah, a little bit of a mixed picture this week. At least some of them, with the Terranis bumping off of 25 million, especially the Aries going down here, give me a little bit of hope that we are still in for a lower price band. If I look at here, 2 months here, 2 months, 2.5 months, yeah, it actually needed 3 months right here, then another 3 months. It could be 2 to 3 months until, if this pattern repeats again, until we actually start to see that 25 million average. But it's still my expectation, and we'll see if it happens or not. Next up, we have the Tech 3 market, 33.15. Like that. Let's take a look at the destroyers first. Of course, ooh, that is not good news. Here is the Confessor back below 35 million ISK here. 37 for the sellers, 32 million for the buyers. A lack of demand. This is starting to look like a really interesting chart to jump in on some of these. The previous pattern, 30 million. You're buying pretty close to that. If something happens in Nullsic and someone wants some Confessors, then you know, this might actually turn out to be quite profitable. But let's take a look at the numbers of this. Well, it's not crazily oversupplied, so maybe this is actually a buy opportunity, because I'm not seeing hundreds of them here, and 31.8, that's a really big margin. So trying for buy orders at the for the Confessor this state of the market, I think, makes absolute sense. Don't go completely crazy, but if you can manage to buy, I don't know, up to 10 of them, I think that you're in for a potentially really good trade. Hecate next, same thing, just jumping right down below 40 million ISK, falling right down below 40 million ISK. Look at that supply though. So I'd say here it's too early. It's 36.6 million for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers, but with still 40, 43, 44, another 91 coming in here. I'd say it's too early to buy on this dip. I think we still have a ways to down to go. Jackdaw, same pattern again. Let's take a look at the volumes here. A bit more respectable, 37 million basically for most sellers, and here buyers 31.5 million, again giving you that nice margin to play with to try and pick some Jackdaws below 35 million. Is not bad, not too crazily oversupplied. On nullsec action, on a big nullsec purchase, this might actually be a pretty good place to make a move. And then finally we have this Vapul for the destroyers, also breaking 40 million on the downside. Still has a ways to go, so as a result we do still see 124 here. More people competing with that. 39 for the sellers, 34 million for the buyers. This one, I'd say it's probably still a little bit early to make a move on this one, but I like the Confessor and I like the Jackdaw, and these are actually two popular ships also in nullsec as doctrines. Let's see what the cruisers are doing. Here is the Legion stabilizing, I would say, around 140, 135 for the sellers, 127 for the buyers, and look at these, several hundred of them at 140 million. That is that oversupply specter that's looming. It's not across the board, right? Jackdaw Confessor, not too crazy, but it is there in the Hecti, a little bit in this Vapul, the Legion. I mean, that's still hundreds of them that need to be absorbed by the markets. Then we've got the Loki, stabilizing below 200 million is here, and look at that, 420, 240, 84 of them. That's hundreds of them coming in at 195. People are starting to compete below that, and that's not good. I think that we could go down in price for the Loki. The Proteus staying where it is as well. What's the supply looking like? Again, look at that, 30, 25, 20, then 270 of them at 140 million is driving the price to go even lower yet again. And then the Tengu, none of them are moving much, but you can still see that there are still so many ships on the market at the anchor points that someone is setting, 145 in this case, that it's not a good time. I think it's too early to buy on these ships. I think what I would like to see is for that extra supply to dry up here, like with the Confessor. That's, I think, when all the pressure has been dealt with, and this looks really interesting to me. So does the Jackdaw. The others, still too much supply and too early for me to pull the trigger. And then for the extra material this week, I chose Ancient Relics, something completely different. But with all the tech tree action here, especially with that oversupply from last week, and we still see that oversupply in many of them from this week. In fact, where it's not oversupplied, we see a lack of demand and a big margin between buyers and sellers. I'm wondering if this is showing up in this chart as well. And look at that, intact armor nanobots, for instance, definitely going down in price as well. If we make this chart a little bit bigger here, we can see that we dropped from 15 million to currently less than 5, then 10 million for the sellers, 4 million for the buyers. Look at that lack of demand. There's just too much supply in all of this stuff, which is definitely dangerous for the oversupply in the tech tree ship. So this, for instance, is used to, let's see, create a blueprint copy for a tech tree component. So let's go over these, but we already saw that the intact armor nanobot went down in price. Here's the intact hull section, definitely close to 10 million for a while, actually taking off a little bit. Sellers now at 20 million, buyers at 12.5 million, and this is ship related, but here this was a period of pressure where we also saw more supply and lower tech tree prices. Intact power cores, 1 year low point pretty much, selling for 2.4 million, buyers coming in at 1.8 million. Yeah, that's definitely showing pressure on the tech tree market. Just there's lots of supply, stable wormhole space, and here again, look at that jump back down here from well above 10 million to less than 10, 8.5 million for the sellers, 7.1 for the buyers. Lack of buyers here again. Very interesting jump down. And supplies here are still coming in at these much lower prices. Subroutines, same story. Armor bots, it's not a 1 year low point, but it's definitely down in price in the last couple of months. Here's another hull section, look at that, going now for 2.5 million ISK, 3 million for the sellers, 2.5 for the buyers. So it's in fact these buyers that are winning out, and we actually had spikes up to 12.5 million. That's definitely pretty respectable sell opportunity right here, but this does show that, I mean, wormhole space is probably just outproducing demand by quite a bit. The power cores very flat at the 1 million price range. Here are the thruster cores, again 1 year low point here. Are we selling for 2.1 million? Yeah, pretty crazy stuff. Subroutines also definitely playing with the 1 year low points. Pressure in the small intact hull section here. So if this continues, I think that this is for the destroyers. Yep. If this continues here, this will mean more supply in the destroyer market later on, and as a result, look out, and might not be the best time to buy those confessors, for instance. Another small malfunctioning hull section, again showing that pressure in the last couple of months. So we've got either they're coming from a 1 year high point, but they've been going down in the last couple of months, or they're actually at or close to a 1 year low point here. Same with the wrecked armor nanobots. Look at that dip down here. So we were trading them for 2 to 2.5 million ISK now. Less than a million ISK, and supply just keeps coming in. So this is going to also, of course, lower prices, but it also shows the stability of wormhole space and the oversupply situation there. Wrecked power cores, very stable at yet another leg down. Wrecked thruster sections, that one is actually doing okay. And then the weapon subroutines, also look at that, trading very stably at a 1 year low price range. So these ancient relics, I would say, are a very strong indication that we have to be careful when it comes to the tech tree market, because there is obviously an oversupply situation that has been building and is still brewing, and is going to continue to have an impact there. So be careful if you do make those purchases. You know, I do like where the confessor's at. I like this chart, but don't go too crazy in the volumes. Definitely have the patience for a buy order. Try and pick them up really cheaply, so that in case something happens in Nozick, for instance, confessors, jackdaws, they do make sense to have a couple ready for sale. And that's it for this week then, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.